My name is Rudi Roose. I'm a professor of social work at Ghent University in Belgium, and I'm also editor-in-chief of the European Journal of Social Work and the chair of TISA, the International Social Work and Society Academy. And I'm here today in ULusófona, Porto, because we organized the TISA conference here this summer, 2025, together with the colleagues from ULusófona. So we're here to prepare the conference. So if you ask me what is social work and how to describe it shortly, I would say a social worker is a professional who analyzes social problems in society and also tries to find solutions for those social problems in society by supporting people and communities. If you ask me what a good social worker is and the characteristics of a good social worker, I would say it's someone who is very critical, who is very analytical, who has a research perspective on things, who can analyze social problems, and at the same time who has the patience to deal with complex social problems and who is very engaged in dealing with social problems. And I would say who does not get frustrated by keeping engaged towards complex social problems while a lot of times the problems we work with are not easy to be solved. So I would say patience, engagement and critical analysis are the most important things. Well, in my perspective, the biggest social problems are maybe the lack of solidarity that we experience in current society towards people in vulnerable situations. Also the growing dichotomy between people in terms of who's right and who's wrong. So it's very hard these days to discuss in a thorough way how to deal with social problems. And I think this is a very big challenge for social workers, how to address this decreasing solidarity and how to preserve also the systems of social security and solidarity that we have in our society and had in our society for many decades. What are the areas we need social workers the most in these days? I think it depends on society, from society to society, or can differ from society to society. It can be child care, but also, of course, given the demographics in many societies, it can be elderly care. For me, it's not about where do we need them most. For me, it's more about how do we keep the different sectors and different practices linked to each other. And in a lot of ways, people who work in child protection and elderly care face the same social problems in terms of individualization, again, lack of solidarity, marketization, neoliberalization. So for me, it's not about priorities, it's about keeping different practices linked and not losing sight of the big picture. Levels, I think as individual social workers, we have a responsibility to be critical and not obey rules because we are expected to obey rules. So that's on one level. We are moral agents and need to keep thinking for ourselves and not be too obedient. I think there's a responsibility on a collective level. We need to have collective structures where social workers over different practices and countries meet each other, discuss these social problems, and take a common stance. And I think it's also a big responsibility for social work educational programs to train and educate critical social workers. Well, as an editor-in-chief of a, I would say, important European journal on social work, of course I stress first of all the importance of good research. Social work is a practice-based profession, but also an academic discipline. We need good research in social work. And the second thing is then we need people who can write down that research and disseminate it not only in their own local context, but in an international community. And then of course a journal is important. And if people want to get published in a journal, first of all, they need to do good research and solid research and methodologically sound research. Second of all, they need to write it down also in a way that their knowledge that they develop in their local context travels beyond their local context. There's a lot to be learned, I'm sure, from what's happening in Porto, for instance, for what's going on in my country, Belgium, and vice versa. And I think it's important to build European global communities where we learn from each other. And I think that's one step. There are many steps to be published and many things to do before you get published. One is doing good research. Second is making sure your knowledge travels beyond what we can learn from the local context to other contexts. Of course, I focus as an editor of a European journal and an organizer of the TISA conference on a European level. I focus on the European context in the first place, but I don't think we should limit it to the European context. Now, given the complexity of the social problems we have to deal with, I think there are a lot of similarities in Western countries and certainly also in Western European countries where we face neoliberalism, neo-managerialism, the undermining of welfare states in many countries, and I think these are similar problems that can of course be diverse in the concrete context of countries, but which are very similar and make people who are vulnerable extra vulnerable. And I think that's a common challenge for European social work, to develop strong solidarity systems. And I think given the demographic nature of our societies, that for instance elderly care is in many countries a big challenge that we have not addressed properly enough in social work till this day. But there are many other, I mean, the migration situation, or the refugee situation is of course a problem or a situation we share. So there are many different complex situations that we share across European countries. Neoliberalism is of course a very complex concept, and it requires a little bit of explanation what it means, but to be short, it is a thinking where everything can be marketized, everything is competitive, everything is economic, and people are seen as entrepreneurs. They have to develop themselves. It's all about individual responsibility and how much you are worked in the marketplace. And I think this is a very, very negative way of thinking about human life, and makes people who are not fit to join the rat race is a very negative thinking, especially for vulnerable groups, but I would say for everybody in society, because this economic thinking and the dominance of it, that everything is for profit, is really quite a detrimental idea, not only for people but for the planet, given, for instance, the discussions on sustainability and ecological challenges that we face. So I think it's for social workers one of the biggest challenges to deal with. Referring to the idea of technology and social work, I think that's another big challenge that many countries deal with. I think it's a very important one. I think as many things, it brings opportunities. We learned all during the COVID crisis that technology can help us stay in touch, that can bring us together in a way. So I think we should see and grasp the opportunities that technology and digitalization brings us. At the same time, we know from research that digitalization have many downsides. And again, it's often people who are already often in vulnerable situations that bear the negative effects of this digitalization. There is important work in the United States and in other countries where we see that, for instance, the way decisions are made by algorithms rather than by human beings can be very negative towards people in poverty, people in disabilities. So I think we need to be very careful and try to use the benefits of it, but not lose sight of the downsides it has. TISA, the International Social Work and Society Academy, was founded about more than 20 years ago by four universities, or 4 professors from different universities in Europe. And Hans-Uwe Otto was the chairman for a long time. And the idea was to bring together European researchers, specifically also young researchers, to build a strong European research community. And I became chair in 2015, and we organize a lot of activities for young PhD researchers, and also organize a yearly conference in Porto next summer for more experienced researchers. And the idea is to again build a collective awareness of social work and social work research, and to learn from each other and to develop a critical stance towards social problems. How do I imagine the future of social work the next 10 years? That is a very difficult question. Well, I hope we stay strong. I hope we develop and keep developing good and critical and professional social work. But it will not be easy, given what is going on in Western European countries and given the pressure on solidarity systems. It will be a big challenge for us to also professionals and educators and researchers to stay on task. And I think we have a lot of work to do.